Hello and welcome to the Cynic Weekly on Thursday the 12th of February 2026. I'm your host Barry Gallagher. We've got an action-packed show for you tonight, and as always I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend Stuart Duggan. Stuart, how are you?
I'm very well, Barry. I'm looking forward to this. I feel like in what's been just the never-ending difficult season, there's maybe some positivity. Who knows? Maybe it's just Stockholm Syndrome, but I look forward to discussing it all.
Yes, I think we've got to take the joy when we can, because Lord knows there's not been much of it to go around. Also joining us is our good friend Scott Fleming. Scott, how's things?
Good. I've seemed to have just about finally got over my flu sinusitis thing that I've been boring everyone with for weeks. So it's good to bring us three back together for what feels like the first time in about a couple of months.
It does.
Earth, wind and fire, that's what they call us, apparently.
That's what the streets are saying. Barry, I've got a question for you, and it's not going to work ideally because it's quite a visual question, but have you come dressed as an association referee? I have to know. I cannot see the bottom of that top, but it looks like you might.
It's actually one of the Adidas.
It's an Oasis thing. Very nice. That's cool.
Yes, but the fact that it's long sleeve as well, it is very Azteca 1970 World Cup.
Yeah, it looks like you're playing a referee in an advert and they can't use any official branding, and they've gone, what's the most iconic referee look? And it's like Adidas. Probably would be two stripes for legal reasons, but just had to clear that up. Thank you.
Yes, that's the first yellow of the evening.
Absolutely take that.
No, but I see where you're coming from. Yeah. Tonight we're going to obviously discuss last night's results, I guess. We've got some news about some injuries, some quotes from the manager and the assistant manager, and then we will look ahead to, I suppose, our upcoming fixtures in general, because again they are coming thick and fast, and with more sort of detail thrown on the game at Rugby Park on Sunday. We've got some listeners' questions, and if there's time we might do a line-up quiz. I'm sure the two of you will be delighted with that. But Stuart, I'll come to you first with the opening question. Do you feel any more confident about our chances of winning the league after last night's results? Because I think I was listening to the reaction earlier when I was coming home from work, and I think Gal and Paul both made the point that it was going to be a very, very different reaction had things not transpired very late once again, as how they did. But it's, and again, you alluded to it just a few moments ago, Stuart, that this season has been topsy-turvy. I feel like it's lasted about 3 to 4 years, and it's aged me about 10 years. But how are you feeling after the results? And we can maybe touch on the performances as we delve a wee bit deeper.
So I don't think that it will have necessarily changed my overall outlook about the title picture. I don't think that anything that happened last night, or even the night before, indicates a big swing one way or the other. I think that there are positives, and maybe we'll start with them because, as you say, there's been enough negative to go around. That I think it was Kieran Tierney that was saying today, the team are creating a lot of chances, and in the first half they really were creating clear-cut chances, and that's positive because obviously even if you're not taking them, it shows that maybe it's an off night, maybe the keeper's just had a great game. It has somewhat been the story of the season, creating things, not taking our chances, and then opening up ourselves to either a defensive lapse or a set piece, or, as was last night, a decision that goes against you. Not that it was a contentious decision, but, a penalty or something like that. I think that I don't enjoy it when Callum McGregor comes out and says that it's a really positive thing that we keep scoring these winning goals because it shows how much belief and desire there is in the group. I think you don't get those last minute goals without there being a modicum of desire in the group, but that it's just not a sustainable way to play and rely upon getting through that. And there was a lot of conversation just after the game of the number of times we've done that. Obviously it's twice in a week with Dundee, and those are maybe a bit more glaring because it's lower calibre of opposition, and we're still going into the 91st, 95th, 96th minute to win these games. But there's the St Mirren game, both home and away this year. There's the Kilmarnock game away. Even the Motherwell game that we won at home. Lots of examples of late goals. And sometimes it's games that we have had control over and just have let sort of slip through our fingers. And again, is that particularly sustainable? Probably not. But maybe we are just going to grind the bones of this season through and just keep winning by the odd goal. And it's not pretty, but it's effective. And I think that's kind of what Hearts have been doing. You saw that on Tuesday night, that they weren't the best team. They absolutely could have lost that game, but they found a way to win. And that's probably why they've had the sticking power that they have. And then last night, the Rangers result, I watched the highlights back. It's a good point for them because I'm not sure that they were the better team. And I think Motherwell are a really good side. And so that doesn't really reveal much about their underbelly. I think the weekend probably will, between Hearts and Rangers, to see who might come out as like maybe it won't be a 3-horse race after all, depending on how results go. But I don't think that we can look too much at other people because we're just scraping by at the moment, and I'm not sure how long that can last. Maybe all season, maybe it comes to a halt on Sunday.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Scott, just before I bring you in, do you think, Stuart, that there's been a lot of talk about the sort of short-termism of, obviously, we'll get 6 loan signings in this season. There's a number of players who are here permanently that I don't imagine will be here beyond the summer. But you spoke there about just grinding things out. Does it kind of feel different this season to any other than sort of recent memory, that it seems like all bets are off? Like, I feel like as a support and as a club, we're kind of putting a style of play per se to one side, the long-term future of the club. It just kind of feels like the more sort of here and now focused that we've probably ever been, or not, or in recent times anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one thing that is now starting to become apparent is perhaps just a lack of tactical identity about this Celtic side, and it is like last night. I don't know what they're coaching. I love Fozzie, I love Sean Maloney, I love Martin O'Neill. I'm not really sure what they're coaching. It might just be shuffle the ball to the left-hand side of the pitch, smash across in front post, see what happens, because that was basically rinse and repeat. But I think the thing that differs from normal, you've got a lot of players there that have done the course and distance, but it's actually those players that are kind of not letting you down, but they're not doing what they once did. And if anything, this sort of cavalcade of loan signings are giving us like little small injections of energy to get over the line. And it might well be that everyone just takes a wee shot of being a moment's player and has their little moment, and then maybe Alistair Johnson comes back and gives you a moment, and it's just these little things that just generate enough momentum to keep us moving forwards. This notion that it's all going to click and someone's on a hiding, I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with that, because we did kind of see that against Utrecht, and you see how quickly the team can just melt in front of your eyes. So even if last night, if we went 3 or 4 goals up in the first half, as we absolutely should have, I don't think that it necessarily guarantees that we're going to see out games in a really composed fashion. And if anything, as I say, these loan players, just look at the last couple of games. It's Shvanshara, it's Adamu, it's now Oxlade-Chamberlain that are coming up with the big moments, when it used to be Hatate, it used to be McGregor, it used to be Maeda. So I think they are just very much focused on the short term, very much on the here and now, and literally just moments. And that's never really been us. The Dundee game was really stark for it. We never really controlled the game, so it's not like we'll keep the ball and then we'll build up from here. It's like we're very happy to play in transition, very happy to just contest and hope that we come out on the right side of it. And so far we have, but yeah, it's not great to watch, and it's obviously makes just for generally quite a nervy experience. Yeah,
definitely. And yeah, I'm sure we'd all have loved to be out of sight in these games, but as you say, we still find a way to win thus far. Scott, how's your sort of confidence levels? Any more confident after last night's results, or is it still the kind of same as it was going into these games?
Yeah, similar to Stu. I don't think my confidence levels have gone up or down since last night, really. Like, as a one-off moment, I really enjoyed it. The Oxlade-Chamberlain goal going in, and then the Stephen Welsh moment a couple of minutes later. It felt nice. It felt sort of familiar to a lot of moments we've had like that over the years in title races, where just feels like things are beginning to sort of tectonic plates are starting to move in your direction a little bit. But the more I've sort of sat with it and thought about it today, I think I'm struggling more with how much with the idea of it, of just how how little chances we're creating, how few goals we're scoring, and the fact that that's turned out to be a recurring theme even against the worst teams in the league, and quite literally the worst team in the league last night. Like a team who are just 100% bound for the championship and very, very low on confidence, just changed their manager. You know, going into last night, I really looked on it as an opportunity to just boost the goal difference as much as anything else, because I'm afraid that could be a factor. I think we're, 7 goals worse off than Hearts and 3 worse off than Rangers as it stands. I know those aren't massive margins, but if you're scoring as few goals as we have been all season, then I don't think there's any guarantee that we're going to reverse that between now and the end of the season. So I looked at last night as a big opportunity to start bridging that gap. And I know there's been a lot of chat about the opening half hour and the amount of chances we wasted. Again, looking back at it today, watching highlights and so on, it strikes you just how straightforward a lot of the saves actually are for a Prior, for the Livingston keeper. What concerns me more, no matter how good you think the first half hour is just how we completely stop playing after the Sarrachi goal and basically don't create a chance again up until Oxlade-Chamberlain. So I know it's something we've talked about repeatedly on the pod this season, just the idea that it's coming, like whatever the sort of the further tactical variations are that Maloney and whoever else is dreaming up on the training ground, they are just around the corner. I think that's becoming harder and harder to believe now, and you do just wonder how many times we can pull off that trick between now and the end of the season, because I mean, it's mentally draining for us as fans sitting through the last 2 games. I'm sure it is for the players as well to a degree. The reason I would say, as negative as I'm probably coming across, the reason I would say my confidence levels haven't gone up or down is I think that this week, this midweek round of fixtures has really reiterated that Rangers and Hearts aren't any great shakes either. I mean, you touched on it a minute ago. Stu touched on it a minute ago. The fact that, you know, Rangers conceded a last-minute equaliser, and still it seems like a good point for them. That's the extent to which they were outplayed last night. It's a decision I really regret now, but I sat through the Hearts Hibs game on Tuesday, and I thought Hearts were just awful, absolutely awful. Considering what was at stake, you know, a home derby, chance to go 9 points clear. And I do realise that there's a certain amount of irony in me saying that about them when with some of the performances we've turned in this season. So I do just worry about a lack of creativity. I do just worry about turning every single game into such hard work. And I do look at that game on Sunday at Rugby Park and a ground where obviously we don't have the best record at the best of times. And they've got a management team who I wouldn't say are usually competent, but they will be absolutely desperate to get a result against us. And it does just put the fear into me a wee bit. But at the same time, I am more convinced than ever after those midweek games that Rangers and Hearts will slip up several times. It's just a question of whether we are going to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think O'Neill and both Maloney today kind of mentioned that the fact that there are going to be sort of twists and turns in this title race, and you just got to hope that, Stuart, as you said, that these moments, more of them go in our favour than not, because similar to what Scott was saying there, I'm not the most confident going into the game on Sunday, not to jump too far ahead, but I think we do have to sort of kind of muster a formula from somewhere, and we have a good record in terms of results under O'Neill, but as you said, the performances, as we know, that you can't keep relying on them, because eventually the results will start to show what your performances are producing.
Yeah, I think if you are looking for more positives though, in terms of how can, obviously we can't do any more business, we are where we are with the personnel, but I do think that it was a 15-minute cameo from Oxlade-Chamberlain, and I know we're going to talk about him a bit more, but I thought there was a real, and you have to take it with a pinch of salt because it's such a small amount of time. He had so much space against a poor opponent who were just wanting to sort of dig in and ride it out. But I honestly just thought there was a couple of times when he just does the really simple things really well and with quality, like touch pass sort of stuff, and you watch his movement. And I don't think that you necessarily see that same thing with a Nygren, for example, certainly an off-form Hatate. And his goal is, I think, just a really visceral example of what maybe O'Neill and Maloney, etc., have been crying out for, about adding quality to the squad. You don't need bodies. We see bodies. Joel Mvuka is a body. He's someone that can go and play right wing, and he's probably not going to offer you much of an alternative to Yang, essentially, and that's if, you know, he improves dramatically from the outing we saw at the weekend. But just the way that he strikes that ball last night is just quality. It's just really, really good, and I don't think that he's going to become, you know, the beating heart of the team, and I don't think that he should be relied upon to be the beating heart of the team. But if he can come in and add little moments of quality, whether that's scoring goals from distance, scoring goals himself, or bringing other players in to have their little moment, then I think that that is really, really positive. I also thought that some of his comments in the post-match, you don't really have him pegged as this like elder statesman, this that he's going to come and like coach players through games. I thought some of his comments were almost quite barbed when he was like, yeah, I think we just need to know that we, and he kept using we, but he was like, we can't spurn so many chances and we need to be clinical, and almost like saying everyone needs to just calm down, take a breath, take your chances when they come along, and maybe that will, his influence in the dressing room, his influence at training will rub off on some of the other players. And the other big elephant in the room, I think, particularly for these last two games when we've watched Celtic toil against lower opposition, is just get the fans back in. I think it's such an easy win for the board. I think it would have such a big impact, and that's nothing against anyone who's been in the last, who was there last night, about the atmosphere or anything, but it's just completely different. And I find that in little spells where Celtic had 3, 4, 5 really good chances, when they don't score, they can kind of just like ebb out the game. Whereas Scott points out, when Sarrachi scores his goal, it's almost like, right, well, that's the job done. I think if you have like a Green Brigade in a full stadium properly roaring on the players, these are players that are very evidently low on confidence and a little bit low on personality. I know they're showing it with these late goals, but all I mean is that they revert to type quite quickly and quite easily in games. And I think if you have a really big fan base keeping them honest, then you will see probably more of an impact on players like Taneki, players that can have good 20 minutes and then just disappear. It won't really be allowed to happen, I think, if you have like a proper atmosphere. So I think that's something that could hopefully change in the coming weeks and hopefully have an impact on some of the performances.
Yeah, I think it would just give everyone a boost, and as you say, if players need that extra sort of 4 or 5%, then the crowd could simply give them that. Scott, just on Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I've got some quotes here. He said, "Massive. Whenever I go anywhere, I want to win. I'm sure everyone in that dressing room feels the same way. This is part of my DNA and part of what motivates me for sure. First things first, just to get out on the pitch for me there, be able to help the lads take 3 points, that was massive. I can just build from here. You can't focus too much on everyone else. The job is to win all the games. That's what we need to be looking to do every time we step on the pitch. I think that's what this football club aspires to do every time we step over the white line." He mentioned as well, these are the moments you dream of, playing at places like this and being able to impact the game, help the team and create moments like that. It's a dream start for me. It was amazing. It's been the best part of my season so far anyway, tongue in cheek. I thought the atmosphere was really good. Boy, have you got in for a surprise when the crowd get back in. I appreciate that from the fans after the goal went in, and that applause, that means a lot. So Scott, obviously sort of Roy of the Rovers type debut for him, but how did you think he performed in that sort of 15 minutes cameo, as Stuart said, alongside the goal, the other things that he did too?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was a bit sceptical about the signing last week, but it's one of those, once you get that moment, you're already thinking, whatever else happens from now on, this has kind of been worthwhile. Obviously, the big thing that's going to have to be established from now on is just how fit he is to be starting games, maybe starting more than once a week, although obviously he isn't in the Europa League squad as things stand. But yeah, you do just get the impression that he will, even if he isn't as obviously as dynamic as he used to be, he will just be able to inject those little bits of class, whether it's a finish like that or a pass or even just a piece of movement. I thought it was interesting. I really enjoyed he sort of did like a 10-minute long press conference last night, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he's obviously just quite an intelligent, articulate, charismatic kind of a guy, but he's also got a sort of air of authority, just having had the career that he's had and played for the clubs that he's played for. So it was interesting to listen to him. And one of the things that he said was that he was basically just sitting on the bench, seeing the gaps in the midfield that Livy were leaving, and just wishing he was on the pitch to exploit those, basically. So that's something that could be really interesting to see as the weeks go on, because it's obviously something that we haven't had anywhere near enough of from our other midfielders this season is popping up in those kind of positions and providing a genuine goal threat.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it was evident, like you could see from the runs he was making and the positions he was taking up, that it surprised me, Stuart, in a way that his fitness, as Scott mentioned, was at that level. I know it was only sort of 15 minutes or so, but you can tell that he hasn't lost any of that sort of guile. He might have lost out in sort of from injuries and stuff, but for me, it looked like he could be a real asset, certainly in the short term, anyway.
Yeah, I think I know that match fitness and having trained regularly are two very different things, but I think people probably do need to remember he's been training with Arsenal for 3 months, and the standards, you're talking about maybe the best team in the world at the moment, the top of the Premier League, they top the Champions League, they were unbeaten, they're just like a really, really good side with some of the best players in the world. And I think if you're able to hang with them at training, some of the technical stuff would probably show up quite a lot. Now, I'm not suggesting that he went and ran the show at training, but all I mean is it's of a very high standard. So if you've been operating at those high standards, you probably will see a gulf coming in against Livingston, for example. The fitness thing, I would imagine, will just take a little bit of time to get up to. The weekend is quite an interesting one because you've got that 4G pitch, which I would imagine might rule him out, because you just don't want to take that risk. I think after having such a high last night, you really don't want the story to be that, you know, his old sort of injury demons come back and that's kind of it. I agree with what Scott says, that even if that's all he does, that could be a really, really, really big 3 points. And it's given everyone a lift in the short term. And when you look at it in the same game state last week, you would realistically be bringing on Luke McCowan in that role and asking him to go and create a bit of a moment of magic. And I know Luke McCowan contributed to the winner at Dundee, but other than that, he was incredibly poor. And I think that just little moments like that are huge. I really enjoyed his presser. He reminded me a lot of Matt O'Reilly. I know that they're at different ends of their sort of career trajectories, but I just thought he's clearly a very, as you say, eloquent young man. Spoke really well, and I think that's quite refreshing to see that he kind of gets it. I like that he spoke with quite a bit of respect for Livy as well, where you don't have this like Joey Barton or this, you know, cavalcade of players that have come up in. I've said cavalcade quite a few times tonight, I think. Might be wrong on that. It's really, that stopped me in my tracks, because like, where are you getting that from?
Glenn Michael over here, is that who that was? Glenn Michael's cavalcade, is that right?
Miller?
Yep.
Glenn Miller.
Glenn Michael, yeah. We've shown our age. Gals confirmed it in the chat, yep.
Anyway, he's good. I think that's my point.
Yeah, do you know what I was thinking, Stu, this morning when I was looking like his Instagram and all that, and you see the comments from Joe Hart, Van Dijk, Declan Rice. Remember last season when things were going well in Europe and we spoke about how we quite like when it's kind of
like the match of the day.
Yeah, it's a bit like, please, I can have some more. Yeah,
we are massive.
Yeah, that's it. Like we hate normally when we're talked down to by an English, but when they give us crumbs from the table, we certainly lap them up. And it made me think of that today because it gave me a smile.
Yeah, I think it would be quite funny if he came up and was just absolutely electric for 6 months, and you've got these Rangers fans like, how the fuck did we spend all that money on Ramsey and nothing happened and blah, 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 and also see if he does come and have a Joe Hart trajectory and absolutely falls in love with the club. That's really easy business to do for next year if you want to extend that. And even if this is just him putting himself back in the shop window, we need any help that we can get to try and get things over the line. So great to have him.
Yep, absolutely. Scott, one of the kind of disappointing aspects last night was the injury to Arne Engels. Obviously went off, and then there was talk that he was on crutches. There was some comments from Sean Maloney today. He didn't have a definitive answer, but his tone was more sort of caution rather than panic, and he said, no, it's still a bit soon, that's a shame. I think Arne has been a standout for us since we've come back. I think that's what probably makes Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain signing even more important. Luke McCowan was brilliant against Dundee. Not sure, Sean. The squad's in good shape. Hopefully Arnie's not too long. It would be a real blow, I think, if he was to be out for any prolonged period of time.
Yeah, it's funny to look back on it now, but when everything was going wrong at the beginning of the season, we kept on talking about all the different problem departments within the team and how the only area we could be sort of positive about was the midfield. And now it feels like that's flipped on its head to a certain extent, and we're all questioning Calmac, we're all questioning Hatate, we're all questioning Nygren in every respect other than his goal scoring. McCowan's not really in the picture. Bernardo isn't taking any chances that he gets. So yeah, Engels, as much as he's had quite a patchy season, I think if you were looking at being without him for any longer than a fortnight or something, then it could become a problem. And that's why there would be that temptation to almost sort of run before you can walk with Oxlade-Chamberlain, which would be risky for the reasons that Stu touched on a minute ago. But yeah, I think those problems in the midfield were really evident last night during that period I mentioned in between our first and second goals, where it's all just so slow and uninspired. It's just working it to the left, working it to the right, put in a cross. I'm glad at least that we've got fullbacks that can deliver good crosses now, which feels like a little bit of a novelty. But that doesn't mean you should just do it all game. There's just, in terms of actually playing through teams and like 1-2s and combinations in the edge of the box, other than the Tanecki goal at the weekend, it's really hard to think of many recent examples where we've done that successfully. So it is becoming more and more of a concern. Yeah,
definitely. And just on that, some quotes from Arne Engels about Reo Hatate. So it was Hatate who came on. He said, I think players, and he mentioned about the fact that there was interest from Brazil, and he said, I think players go through this over the course of a season. I know you can't live in past glories, but Reo was one of the top players in the SPFL about a season and a half ago. He's just got to try and regain the sort of form again. The window's gone, or I thought it had gone, and that's it until the summertime. I think I mentioned the German side that were supposed to be interested in Dyson. That probably plays in your mind for a while, but he's got down to it. Everybody in the transfer window thinks, oh, I can go here. And then when the 1st or 2nd of February comes and it's not happening, you just have to settle down again. There's loads to play for them personally, as much as playing for us. I thought that was quite interesting, Stu, that O'Neill came out with that, and it's probably not what Reo wanted to hear about a season and a half ago, because that seems a very long time ago. I would argue that he kind of finished last season very strongly until he got that injury up at Pittodrie. I remember there was a game at Celtic Park where he scored a screamer. But it just kind of feels like he's one of the players, one of many, not just to single him out, that their time probably has been and gone at Celtic, but as O'Neill says, there's still plenty to play for us, and it still very much should be an honour for him to pull on the hoops.
Yeah, I think that even if you don't want to include last season, I think in isolation this season he's just been very poor. I think that it's okay to think really highly of Reo Hatate and understand his ceiling, but I don't think that you can look at him week in, week out and say that that's the same player and that he's giving you anywhere close to what he's capable of. And even at his best, he could be like a spotty player where he would have just some random, absolutely awful performances in there. You're not really seeing any of the highs anymore. And I know that people are questioning like his attitude, and I think that perhaps, I don't know, I don't think O'Neill would have done that unless that was something that he felt needed to be addressed. Obviously, he's kind of let the team down a couple of times, both with his ill-discipline in the Europa League, and then last night it's just like a carelessness with how he concedes that penalty. It's something I noticed when I was watching the highlights today. When the players all go to celebrate with Oxlade-Chamberlain, Hatate goes up to him and you can see him say thank you, and he gives him a big hug. So that's quite nice that at least he's aware that he's sort of fucked up and that, you know, he's got him out of jail. I think it would be so good if he came good again. I did see a defence of him online that suggested that the way that we're playing doesn't really play to his strengths, but I kind of feel like when Nancy was there, it didn't play to his strengths, and even under Rodgers, he wasn't looking great. So I do think that the player needs to meet the moment kind of halfway. And if Engels is out for any length of time, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, you do have to probably look at Hatate as next man up, with the kind of question marks over Oxlade-Chamberlain and how much he can play. So I think he's going to have like a really important role to play, and just needs to get his head out his arse, quite frankly, and get on with it. And then I think there was, you just don't know what movie he'll get in the summer. There was always thought that he could have gone on and been like a Matt O'Reilly-esque sort of trajectory into the Premier League, into one of the top 5 leagues. But I have a feeling that he might end up in some mad league, just living this weird nomadic career out, but we'll see.
Yeah, I could well see that. Scott, what's your kind of thoughts on not only Hatate's kind of lack of form, but those comments from O'Neill?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with anyone that was really disappointed in Hatate last night and who thought it was just very, very clumsy for the penalty instant. But I do sometimes feel a wee bit sorry for him in that I think he, as much as anyone else, is a victim of what I talked about a minute ago, and just in terms of a lack of a tactical plan, lack of coherent passing football. He always does this little thing, Hatate. I don't know if you've noticed, but when he's sort of lingering around the edge of the box waiting for a pass, he sort of points down to his feet or in front of his feet. And I mean, fair play. The way he's been struggling recently, I wouldn't necessarily trust him to. If you pass to him in a really crowded area at the edge of the box, would I trust him to control it and make the right decision? Maybe not, but I feel like a lot of the time he is just almost playing a different game to everyone else around him, and it's a shame because I think he was one of the ones that seemed to benefit from O'Neill and Maloney being there first time round, and we're not quite seeing that second time around, but. Yeah, the O'Neill comments. It's always interesting with O'Neill since he's came back. You're not sure. You're really not sure when he's being cryptic and when he's basically just saying the first things that fall into his head. You know, the thing about I thought the transfer window was over. You wonder whether that's a pointed reference to something in particular that's happened, or, because I only, maybe I'm just out of the loop. I only read about this Hatate link to, it was a Brazilian club, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I only read about that today. I don't know if that rumour was doing the rounds in January and didn't.
Last week, I think because they went, I don't know if it's closed now, but I think it was certainly, it overlapped hours, so I think that's maybe the point he's making it, or I thought it did. So, like, I see what you mean. It's almost like, what's the word? Like, he's almost like trying to act dittery when I think it's more than that.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll probably come on to it later on as well. Like the O'Neill comments about Sarrachi, like,
yes,
it's wild some of the stuff he comes out with. But yeah, I think long story short with Hatate, you're maybe always going to give him more chances than you would other players, and perhaps even more chances than he deserves, just because when it does click, he does offer you that level of inspiration, which a lot of other players don't. And again, I think he's past his prime at Celtic, and we should have moved on by now, and so should he. But as long as he's there, and as long as we are going to continue to make the same mistakes with recruitment, then there is always going to be the temptation to try and sort of build him back up to what he was.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's because we have had some exceptional moments from him, where, as Stu says, that we thought he was going to be the next one, the next big sort of 20 million or even like sort of higher teen millions to go, but it's not worked out that way one way or another, so maybe he's a victim of the standards that he set himself. We'll go straight into those comments then about Sarrachi from Martin O'Neill. He was asked whether he thinks the club should make the loan signing permanent. He said, yes, I think they should try. I think Kieran Tierney is playing brilliant for us at the moment. Back to the Kieran Tierney that Arsenal ended up buying. He's doing really well. But this little lad scored the goal for us. He's a strange character. I've called him Manuel from Fawlty Towers because he hasn't a clue what I'm saying to him. He just says yes to everything. But yeah, I think the club should be looking at something like that. Stuart, feels a wee bit close to the bone, that type of language. But the sentiment in terms of signing him, I think I would certainly do that. And just delighted to have him back.
Yeah, that's that's the sort of thing that, I don't know, maybe your 74-year-old dad, uncle, grandfather, whatever you wish, would say, and you're like, Dad, why can't you say that? But it's Martin O'Neill, so whatever. It is great to have Sarrachi back. I thought that last night he was not perfect by any stretch. There was a couple of just wee things defensively. That big chance that they had at the start where Schmeichel makes a really good save. You could argue he kind of gets lost a little bit. But in general, I absolutely love him. I love what he brings to the team. I think he's got a real infectious energy that sometimes you just want to grab some of the players, Reo Hatate being one, and just shake them and be like, come on, like, get to it. And I thought that he really brought that for the whole time that he was on. The goal's great. Obviously, it takes a little nick, I think, a little deflection, but even just having the gumption to take a shot on from there was a lot of times last night. I know it's not who you would ideally like to be on the end of it, but I feel like if you've got teams that are sitting deep, Liam Scales had a number of opportunities to just smash it, and he just never ever took it on. It would never be something that he would do. And I just quite like that about Sarrachi, that he's like, well, I'm just going to smash it and see what happens, and you get your rewards. And O'Neill, I think, is also right to highlight Tierney. I thought Tierney was excellent when he came on, and has really been coming onto a game. And for all the haphazard recruitment that we've had, and boy have we had some, I'd now feel like you're almost at a position where you've got the standard of left back and right back and depth that you would want, and it's quite frustrating that you have a player in Arojo who we probably can't afford, or could afford but probably wouldn't push the button on to compete with Johnson. Sarrachi, I think you probably could afford, and that is a deal that you could do, but it's just whether or not. I don't think he speaks a word of English. I'm sure I've heard that, and that must be just a mad way to live his life, where he's evidently not making much of a thing about learning English, and he's just kind of going with it, and that must be difficult. And I think he's got a young family, so I don't know whether that's the sort of thing he would want to sign up for long term, but I think if you had him as a foil for Tierney, that would be really brilliant going forward for a season or two. Yeah,
absolutely. And Scott, Kieran Tierney spoke to the media, as Stu said earlier today as well, and he said, we want the atmosphere to help us and push us on. Everyone at the stadium is trying, and I hope that going forward the atmosphere remains good. We want the atmosphere to help us. This season, the belief in the last-minute winners we have had shows that we never give up. There were more games at the start of the season where we did that, even Kelechi in his debut at Rugby Park. It shows the character. It's one of those reasons where it's going to take results like this and massive shifts in momentum. We just need to keep going. I think Stu's right, Scott, to mention Tierney when he came on. I thought he was really positive, kind of really driving us on down that left-hand side. But just to kind of wheel back a wee bit to what Stu was saying, the quality of the two, the fullbacks that were brought in loan, I think is has been really encouraging. But it's just typical that we don't have any options to buy with these two signings. What do you think on that?
Yeah, just to touch briefly on the point with the atmosphere, the person I really felt sorry for last night was the Japanese ambassador. He turned up, the atmosphere was shite. Hatate and Maeda were shite. Although that could have been nearly any game this season.
I would just come in there and say, well, he did go and toast Margaret Thatcher earlier in the day, so
yeah,
he
had a wild day, didn't he?
He did.
I don't know what he's planning to do tomorrow. It's definitely the strongest area of the team in the moment, the full-back roles, and you can really see it's sad that it's sort of an alien concept at Celtic nowadays, but you can really see how competition brings the best out of players. It's not as if Tierney has gone into a hole now that Sarrachi's fit again, or vice versa. They're both either starting or coming on, but both contributing loads and bringing a lot of energy and quality to their performances. And who knows, hopefully we'll see a similar thing with Araujo and Johnson if Johnson does indeed return before the end of the season. But it's the one I always think of when I make that point is the situation we had with Forrest and Patrick Roberts a few years ago, where and even to a less extent Dembele and Griffiths, like if you've got two players vying over one role and one of them starting and one of them's coming off the bench and you can never quite get clear in your head which one you prefer because they're both so good, that's always such a good situation to have, and we've had it so rarely in recent times at Celtic, so it's really good to see in that left back role. Yeah,
definitely. We've got some listeners' questions. Michael had emailed in, I suppose we've touched on this, but the second part, Stu, you can maybe tackle that for us. So, said, question for the panel: we have 8 games in 24 days, and the way we're playing, I think all will be tough fixtures. I'm sure for many people there are concerns around fitness levels and how the squad will be managed, especially in key positions. We've already seen Engels go off last night and likely to miss a few weeks at least. Will Oxlade-Chamberlain be expected to start as his replacement? Another key position for me is centre-back. If Scales are trusty pick up an injury, will Benjamin Arthur be thrown in? Worrying times. Arthur was obviously on the bench last night. Do you think he'll purely be covered? Do you think there'll be an opportunity for him to get any games?
I think the nature of the games means that there aren't, as the email rightly says, there's no easy games, there's no gimmies. If he was going to get any game time, it probably would have been last night. Obviously, the fact that we've drawn Rangers in the Cup means that there's not even really a chance to properly rotate the squad for that sort of game. So I do think he might just be cover at this point, although you could argue that, after what Stephen Welsh did last night, he's already played his part by coming in and allowing that to happen, which is a shame. I would like to think that maybe he would be ahead of Murray in the pecking order, but I can't see, for all their many visceral faults of like a Liam Scales, I can't see O'Neill pulling them out for any of these games coming up. So I think it would be an injury or a suspension thing that would probably allow him in. And with regards to Oxlade-Chamberlain, and we kind of talked about it, but I think you would hope to drip feed him into the team, and then pretty much by the time you hit those Ibrox games, you're going to want him being quite an integral part of that. Even if he can only play 60, 70 minutes, you really want him to be in amongst that.
Yeah, definitely. Another question, I'll come to you, Scott. This is from Paul, and this maybe would touch on maybe how Arthur could get in the team. He says, "Hi everyone, don't shout me down, but could we benefit from going to a back three? I know the issues we had with our previous manager, but it would allow us to play both strikers and would give us more height at set pieces. Also, with us missing out the midfield a lot, it would allow the midfield to get closer to the opposition box. It could also allow us to control games more." What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be at least a solid 12 to 18 months before Celtic can contemplate playing free at the back again without everyone suffering serious PTSD. Yeah, I just can't see it, just because we don't have enough quality options with ball-playing centre-backs, and I just cannot see a way for it to happen anytime soon, unfortunately. I I understand the basis of the point, and that there would be some benefits to it, and it would remedy some of the issues that we've got just now. But I think it would be a more questions than answers kind of a situation. I also think it's predicated on both the strikers being confident and playing well, and I think what we saw last night is that Chivan Chara is still very much a work in progress. I thought it was his poorest performance for us so far by a distance. So, I mean, it's been talked about quite a bit in the pod recently, the idea that you're signing these 5 players on loan who have all been sat on benches, not getting a lot of game time and not very confident. So with some of them, it's going to take time to build up that confidence. Even someone like Chivan Chara, who seemed to have the fastest start out of all of them, you can see that confidence is still a little bit fragile, and it doesn't take too long to knock it back down a couple of pegs. So as much as we've had some encouraging flashes from both of them, I don't think all of a sudden you could just throw Adamu and Chivan Chara in as a front two and say, okay, this is going to work with any great deal of confidence, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would go along with that. We'll turn our attention shortly to Sunday's game at Kilmarnock, but Stu, obviously as you mentioned, we drew Rangers in the Cup, so we do have a number of difficult fixtures coming up, so just kind of run through them. We've got Kilmarnock on Sunday, then Stuttgart at home, Hibs at home, and then Stuttgart away. And then it goes Rangers at Ibrox, Aberdeen at Pittodrie, then Rangers at Ibrox again, and then we have Motherwell. That's the sort of next 8 fixtures. We are going to need the squad, and I know we touched on earlier the fact that it is kind of thrown together with the loan signings, but it is quite a daunting prospect, and I think it would be in a normal season if we were performing well, and we had the strength of squad that we maybe have had, say 3-4 years ago. But how are your confidence levels? We need a stiff drink to get through the next 6 weeks or so.
Well, I don't think that there are any games now that you can look at, last night being an example, Sunday definitely being an example, where they're like, well, that's going to be a pedestrian 3 points and a couple of goals. And I almost feel, and then kind of basing this a little bit on some of the European performances, if you look at the Bologna game, I almost feel like we might play better against better opposition or when the stakes are higher. It really irked me seeing how poor we were domestically and then how good we could be in Europe, as in like passing the ball around. And I don't think that that's necessarily a decision that we've gone, right, well, we're going to try harder tonight because we're playing against better opposition. But I wonder if the way that we're playing doesn't really benefit us to play against a Livingston or a Dundee, where they sit in and we're just really relying on some sort of innovation to break through them. I know that Dundee were a bit more expansive and they kind of got at us a bit. I just feel like in bigger games we might see bigger performances, and I'm basing that on nothing. I've also got a really weird situation where Celtic have a run of, I think it's something like 5 games in the next 2 weeks, and I'm going to be in Vietnam, and I have just no clue what time games are going to be at. It's like a 7 or 8 hour difference. I don't know if we'll be able to watch things live. We land on Sunday, by which point I think like we'll be playing Kelly, the Rangers Hearts game will be on. I think it's going to be a really mad and difficult thing, but maybe just being a little bit removed from it as it all happens and catch what I can is the best way. So my advice for anyone to get through the next few months is to move to Vietnam. It's the only way.
Yeah, Scott, as I said, like in any normal season, those run of fixtures would be daunting, but there's that extra fear maybe, or anticipation, if I want to look more positively, that we maybe don't know how it's going to go, certainly less than we normally would in a normal functioning season.
Yeah, I think it was definitely quite scary on Sunday night when the draw was made, and then everyone just started putting the screen grabs up on Twitter, and you really process it, particularly those 4 away games. I think I'm also right in saying that if we somehow get past Stuttgart, then the next round, I think it's Porto or Braga, then that would be in between Rangers and Motherwell. I mean, some people might say that's unlikely to be something we're going to have to worry about, but who knows? You never know with Martin O'Neill team in Europe. But Yeah, I think Stuart actually makes a good point about us maybe being a bit better against the better teams who open up and have a bit more of a go against us. I think a big problem for us in games like the last two against Dundee and Livy is we are a team who nowadays we sort of go into a huff and we're sort of just bored of trying to break down deep blocks. So there's a quality issue definitely, but I think there's also a mental aspect to it. So yeah, I'm gradually fooling myself into feeling a little bit more optimistic about it than before. I think what scares me is just the away record this season under all three managers is really poor. Even though even the games we've tended to win away from home under O'Neill, there's been some really laboured poor performances, and I do just wonder whether that will be exposed and tested to breaking point over that run. But yeah, I mean, I think people can live with the really big one. And speaking of being in awkward places for it, I'm in London, I think, for this game, although there is loads of Celtic CSCs down there. But the really big one for me is the first Rangers game on 1st of March, I think it is. I think people can live with Europa League campaign coming to an end. We can live with the Scottish Cup campaign coming to an end. But if we go there and lose and the league hopes are over with a solid 2 months of the season still to play, I think that'll go down like a lead balloon. So that's the one I would really be prioritising and focusing on.
Yeah, definitely. Got that give me a shiver down the spine there, just as you say that. But you're right. So if we were to get past Stuttgart, the games are slated for the 11th and 12th of March, and then
right.
Let me just see. I've got it here. So it'd be the 11th and 12th of March, and then the 18th and 19th of March. So we would, in between the Rangers and Motherwell game, and then the second leg would be between the Motherwell and Dundee United game, which again is away after Motherwell at home. So yeah, it might be more damage than good, but as you say, Martin O'Neill in Europe, there's something about it, and who knows. In terms of Sunday then, Stu, I think we've touched on it already. It's always a kind of traditionally a kind of bogey ground for us. I know we have had some happy times there, but the pitch, but our performances aren't particularly good, and there's no margin for error now. I think O'Neill was kind of saying that last night, even though he did say there will be twists and turns, but we have to be almost perfect, I think, to have a real go at kind of hunting down Hearts in terms of the title. But what are your expectations? And just before I say that, I don't know if you've heard, but has there been any explanation to why the likes of Yang and Mvuka and Iheanacho weren't in the squad last night?
So I think he did speak about Mvuka. I just saw that in a tweet, but it was like linked to a paywall article, so I didn't see the article. So I think he has spoken on them, but I'm not too sure. Yang obviously had he come off? He was talking about being tired or unwell, but he must have played against Dundee because it was the previous game that he came off in.
Yeah.
I don't know. The Iheanacho one, I wonder if O'Neill just doesn't fancy him, because I think that if he was coming back to fitness, he is as tried and tested as we have currently, and I don't know whether or not he's maybe just not quite at full fitness or he's working back, but I would hope that he still has a part to play because it's like what we said with the goal last night. It's just little moments of quality, and he is a player that can provide that. You saw it in even the League Cup final. We sank without a trace as soon as he went off, so hopefully he's not like completely bombed out. I think Sunday's going to be horrible. It's a horrible pitch, a horrible management team. Always difficult games. They are on a bit of a run of form. And yeah, I think this talk that we have to be perfect, I don't think we have to be perfect, but I do think we have to be perfect in games like this.
Yeah.
I think that the combination of the Hearts Rangers game and this game means that it's such an opportunity to cut into one or both that you just have to win. And if it's as horrible as yesterday and you score in the 98th minute and it hits off someone's arse, then so be it. it would be great if you could just go and handle your business. And we have had moments like that at Rugby Park where we've just blown them away. But I suspect it's going to be a bit of a dogfight and, probably quite an unpleasant one. And then you've got all the permutations of the result in the other game to think about. But you just need to handle our own business first.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of message that O'Neill and Maloney are putting out as well, Scott. But it doesn't really have the hallmarks of going to be a classic. But as Stu says, by hook or by crook, come 4 p.m. ahead of the Rangers and Hearts game, that we need to have 3 points on the board.
Yeah, I suspect it will be. If you offered me exactly the kind of win that we had against Livy and Dundee, exactly as scrappy and unconvincing and nervy, I would take that now, even if it will be an extremely uncomfortable Sunday afternoon. I would take it now because it is a fixture that does tend to put the jitters up here a wee bit. I can't help but remember that at the start of the season we went there when they still had Stuart Kettle in charge, like probably worst manager in recent Kelly history, and even then they were seconds away from taking a point off us. So it's always just the issue of, clearly we're going to have good periods in the game, but can we capitalise on them? And if we go 1-0, like, I just feel like we're having so few games this season, particularly away from home, where we get 2 goals ahead at any point and you just have that nice breathe out moment. It would be so nice to have that on Sunday, but it's probably a lot to ask for. But you really can't rule anything out under O'Neill. It's one of the things that gave me a little bit of extra confidence was listening to the Celtic TV commentary last night when they mentioned, I think just before kick-off, O'Neill's overall record in the Scottish League. I'm sure they said he's only ever lost 15 league fixtures, which in 5.5 seasons is insane. So as much as we as Celtic fans can complain about the performance levels and the lack of game plan and all that, there is a strange voodoo thing going on, and you better believe it's in other fan bases' heads. It 100% is. And that clearly we don't have a lot to cling to in terms of patterns of play and all of that stuff, but there is something going on there in terms of just the overall storyline of the season, which can't be ignored, and hopefully we get a little bit more of it, and another sort of standout moment that we can look back on from Sunday afternoon.
I think that's quite an interesting point, and it builds on something I was thinking earlier, that over those last 2 days, you can see 3 pretty flawed teams, and I think that as exciting as it is for everyone that you literally can't call who's going to win it, I think at the end of the day, you're probably going to have one of the worst title-winning sides in modern history. But it feels like every team has their own little thing, where Hearts are just this horrible kind of 1-0 machine who can just find a way to churn out results, whether they get a man sent off or whatever. And we seem to have this late goals thing where there's some crazy stats as well about how many goals Celtic have scored after 85 minutes. I think this season alone it's a lot. And then obviously Rangers with their
set pieces,
officials and set pieces. So yeah, it's interesting that everyone has like their own little identity and their own little lane, whilst none of those identities, and Motherwell have the identity of being a genuinely really good football side, and they're not really competing for the title. They're sort of in this kingmaker role. I do think that injury time goal thing might become a factor where almost mentally you're like expecting to concede a goal in the late thrusts of a game, and then also with the O'Neill thing, as you say, you might just be like, what is this voodoo? How is this happening? And if that's what it takes to get it over the line, so be it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, just quickly on Motherwell. See if you think about that run of draws they had at the start of the season where they should have won them and they kept missing chances. See if you'd won just an extra couple of those, they'd 100% be in this race at this point, wouldn't they? I mean, I follow a few of the fans on Twitter, and I found it mad just reading what they were saying about that game today. Like, they were all so disappointed, and they were talking about how it's probably one of our less impressive performances over the last few months, and they still had 60% possession and all the chances in a big game against Rangers. Like, it is really eye catching.
I find their manager so scary. He's so impressive when he talks, but it's almost like he's intimidating the whole league. Like, listen, when you play Motherwell, you will get battered, you will be played off the park, will be more intense than you, and you're like, oh my god, they will, like, I know they will, like, that of all those horrible away games, probably the hardest one is when they come to Celtic Park at the end of it, so there's no rest.
A quick question, just a yes or a no, before we kind of finish off with that listener's question. Scott, would you take the Motherwell manager as the next Celtic manager? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Stu?
I think so, but I don't think he would be as effective within the Celtic system. For example, I don't think the Celtic fan base would tolerate Stephen Welsh starting every week, and I think that's the sort of thing that he would see as fine. And yeah, I think there might be a slight clash, but he's a very, very talented manager and he's done an incredible job.
Yeah, that's maybe something we can touch on in the coming weeks. Just to finish off then, as we've mentioned, that Rangers play Hearts on Sunday, and Alan set in a question for the weekly. Assuming we beat Kelly, what result do you want at Ibrox? For me, I'd still rather a Hearts win, just because I think that Rangers are the bigger threat. We'd like to know your thoughts. Cheers, guys. I would tend to go along with Alan. I know that it would kind of put Hearts out in front maybe a wee bit, but I agree with Alan that I think that I want Rangers as sort of as far away from it as possible. A draw probably would be the sensible one, but I go with Alan that I think that I would want Hearts to win. Scott, what's your take on it?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I obviously it depends on what we do at Kelly earlier in the afternoon as well. I do like the idea of just Rangers being sort of knocked out of it at that point, and then you just focus on Hearts and of taking advantage of the slips, which I believe there will be. But at the same time, I kind of don't want them to get that boost like that. I think psychologically that would be massive for them if they win a derby and then go and win at Ibrox in the space of a week. So if I can be really boring and pragmatic about it, I think I'm probably leaning towards just a draw maybe being the ideal result from our point of view.
Sure.
I think I keep going back and forth on it as well. I think if Hearts win, they'd be 8 points clear of Rangers, and I think that I'm kind of looking at it through the lens of what would provide us with the biggest insulation from a bad result at Ibrox in the league. Certainly wouldn't want to hand that sort of thing, the momentum, to Rangers in a title race, and I think if they are providing we win, and I also like to, for no reason, bank the game in hand, because we know that's not how that works. You know, if they get beat, you're talking about a 5-point gap or a 6-point gap or something like that, and I don't see us going to Ibrox and winning. So I think if you can go and get a point or something like that, Hearts only being within 3-4 points, I would be quite not comfortable with. None of it's going to be comfortable, but happy enough with going into the split. But yeah, I don't think there's no really good outcome, but there's also no really bad outcome, because we've got to chase them both down, and the only important thing is that we keep winning. Yeah,
I think that's both very valid points, and fingers crossed that we get the result on Sunday, and then we just kind of let them fight out and see who comes out on top. But I think we'll leave it there. Stu, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. It was great chatting that all through. Have a nice week.
Yep, enjoy Vietnam, and hopefully you can see the games, and hopefully they're positive for you no matter when you find out the results.
Well, the last time you remember I was off in some far-flung reach of the world was during the Leipzig game, and my stream cut out just after we equalised, so I woke up in the morning and found out that Donald Trump was the president, but Celtic had battered Leipzig. So, keep more of the same. What could go,
what could go wrong? Scott, thanks very much.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yep, good to have the gang back together tonight. This has been the Cynic Weekly. I've been your host, Barry Gallagher, with Stuart Duggan and Scott Fleming, and we'll speak to you down the road.